There is a book you can still buy online today. It costs less than $20. It has a plain cover and a title that sounds like a memoir from a man who survived a hard life, which in a sense is exactly what it is. And this week, in a courtroom in Las Vegas, prosecutors began reading it out loud. Because for almost 30 years, the murder of Tupac Shakur was the most famous unsolved killing in American music. No arrests, no charges. A case file that got thicker and colder every year while the theories multiplied. Federal conspiracies, faked deaths, rival label wars. And then in the end, the thing that cracked it open wasn't forensic science or a deathbed confession or a witness finally finding courage. It was a man who would not stop talking. His name is Duane Davis. Everyone who knows the story calls him Keffe D. He is 63 years old. And this week he sat in a Clark County courtroom while a prosecutor told 12 jurors that he is the man who ordered Tupac Shakur's death. He has pleaded not guilty. Keep that in the front of your mind for the next 14 minutes, because it matters, and because his lawyer is about to make an argument that is going to be harder to dismiss than you'd expect. Let's start where the state started. September 7th, 1996. Las Vegas. Mike Tyson is fighting Bruce Seldon at the MGM Grand, and the fight is over almost before it begins. Tyson wins in the first round. The arena empties into the casino floor, and among the crowd moving through the lobby is Tupac Shakur, 25 years old, at the absolute peak of his fame, and Marion Knight, Suge Knight, the co-founder of Death Row Records. And in that lobby, they see a young man named Orlando Anderson. What happens next was captured on the hotel's security cameras. It lasts under a minute. Tupac and members of his entourage beat Anderson on the casino floor. It is chaotic, it is public, and it is filmed. Here is how the prosecution described that moment to the jury. Chief Deputy District Attorney Binu Palal told them, quote, "On September 7th, 1996, Tupac Shakur publicly, on camera, participated in a humiliating beating of Duane Davis's nephew." That word, humiliating, is doing a great deal of work in that sentence, because the state's entire theory of this case rests on it. Not a robbery, not a business dispute, not a coastal rap rivalry. Humiliation, and the answer that humiliation demanded. 2.5 hours later, Tupac Shakur was in the passenger seat of a black BMW on Koval Lane, just off the strip. Suge Knight was driving. It was a warm September night and the windows were down. A white Cadillac pulled up alongside them. Palal's words to the jury. Then, 2.5 hours later, Tupac is gunned down in a drive-by shooting from a white Cadillac in an act of revenge. Tupac was hit multiple times. He was taken to University Medical Center. He held on for 6 days. He died on September 13th, 1996. He was 25 years old. He had released 4 studio albums in his lifetime and had a handful of films behind him, 2 of which he would never see released. And for the next 27 years, nobody would be charged with his killing. Now, here is the part that has kept true crime writers and documentary producers employed for 3 decades. Investigators didn't lack a theory. They had a theory almost immediately. Orlando Anderson was questioned. Anderson denied involvement. Anderson was never charged. And in 1998, in an unrelated shooting in Compton, Orlando Anderson was killed. And that is the shape of this entire case. The people in that Cadillac started dying. Of the 4 men prosecutors say were in that car, 3 are now dead. 1 is not. Before we go further, if you believe stories like this deserve to be told carefully rather than loudly, please like this video and subscribe to Celebrity Central. We cover the news the way we'd want it covered if it were our own family in the headline. It takes you 3 seconds and it genuinely keeps this channel alive. So, 3 men in that car are gone, and that left Duane Davis as the last living person who could say what happened inside it, which, for a very long time, made him untouchable. There was no physical evidence tying him to the shooting. There were no cooperating witnesses. There was a cold case with a dead suspect and a wall of silence around it. And then Duane Davis started giving interviews. He did podcasts. He did a documentary. He sat in front of YouTube cameras and talked about that night in detail. About the beating, about the drive, about the retaliation. And in 2019, he published a memoir. It is called Compton Street Legend. In it, he wrote a line that prosecutors have now put in front of a jury. Quote, "We couldn't let no record company studio gangsters do us like that." He described hunting through Las Vegas that night. He described the car. He described the moment. He never named who actually pulled the trigger. And to this day, he never has. In 2023, Las Vegas police searched his home. A grand jury indicted him. And for the first time in 27 years, someone was formally charged with the murder of Tupac Shakur. The charge is 1 count of murder with a deadly weapon, with a gang enhancement. If a jury convicts him, Duane Davis will very likely spend the rest of his life in prison. Now here is where the case gets genuinely strange. And here is where I want you to stop and actually consider the defense, because it is not frivolous. Prosecutors are not saying Duane Davis pulled the trigger. They have never said that. What Palau told the jury is that Davis was the one who made it possible, that he got the gun, that he got into the white Cadillac, and that he passed the weapon into the back seat and told the man holding it to shoot. In the state's language, Davis was the on-site commander, the organizer, the one who turned an insult into a plan. To prove that, they need to prove that what Davis said on all those podcasts and in that book is true. And that is the entire fight. Davis's attorney, Michael Sanft, stood up and asked the jury a question that is almost uncomfortably reasonable. He asked, quote, "What facts do they have after 30 years? Then he told them where to look. Quote, "Look for evidence that shows that Keffe D was even in Las Vegas on the night of the fight. Receipts, credit cards, a picture of him." Think about what he is actually arguing. He's arguing that his client is a man who found out late in life that the most valuable thing he owned was a story, that a memoir sells and a podcast clip goes viral, and that "I ordered the hit on Tupac Shakur" is worth infinitely more in that marketplace than "I wasn't there." He's arguing that his client sold a legend and is now being tried for it, and Davis has, in fact, since told a Las Vegas television station something that directly contradicts his own published book, that he wasn't even present when the shooting happened. So, the jury is being handed a man who has confessed repeatedly, publicly on the record for money, and asked to decide whether any of it was ever true. That is a defendant who is also the prosecution's star witness against himself. There is no other case in American celebrity crime that looks quite like it. Now, about the man who was actually there. Suge Knight was driving that BMW. He was hit by shrapnel, and he survived. He is the only other living eyewitness to the shooting, and prosecutors put him on the witness list. Suge Knight is currently serving a 28-year sentence in California for the 2015 killing of a Compton businessman, and he has made it publicly clear that he wants nothing to do with this trial. Sit with that for a second. The one person in the world who watched Tupac Shakur get shot has said, in effect, "Don't call me." Judge Carly Kearney is presiding in Clark County District Court. The trial is expected to run somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks. Prosecutors have indicated they may call between 35 and 45 witnesses. Eyewitnesses, investigators, gang associates, people who were in and around that night and who have carried it quietly for 30 years. Some of them are now in their 60s and 70s. Some of them have never spoken about this publicly in their lives. And the strangest thing about this trial, the thing I keep coming back to, is how ordinary the room is. Fluorescent lights, a wooden rail, a court reporter, 12 people from Clark County who took a day off work and got picked. That is where the most mythologized death in modern music is finally being examined. Not in a documentary, not in a conspiracy form. In a beige room with a clock on the wall. There's one more thing worth saying, and it isn't about the law. Tupac Shakur was 25. Whatever you think about the world he moved in, whatever you think about that night at the MGM Grand, he was a young man with a mother who outlived him, who spent the rest of her life being asked about the worst thing that ever happened to her. Afeni Shakur died in 2016. She never got a trial. She never got a verdict. She never got a single day in a courtroom where someone stood up and said his name as a victim rather than a legend. That day came this week. It came 30 years late, and it came because a man wanted to sell a book, whatever the jury decides, and they may well decide the state hasn't proven it, and that is a real possibility here. That room is the closest thing to an answer this story has ever had. The white Cadillac pulled away that night and disappeared into traffic. It took 30 years to find out where it was going. If this story moved you, please like this video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who's been following this case since the 90s. Subscribe to Celebrity Central for daily coverage of the stories behind the headlines. Told carefully, sourced properly, and never sensationalized. And tell us in the comments. If a man confesses to a crime in a book he wrote for money, should that confession be enough to convict him?